Live, very good. Cool. Awesome, guys. Thanks for tuning in to today's live and to today's video. Hopefully you already watched it. Hopefully the stats that we shared were useful. The oh, okay. That's good. Okay. Oh, we're good. I'm live. I'm seeing it. Okay, cool. So hello again, guys. Hopefully the stats that we shared on YouTube were useful. I'm always looking for these kind of like YouTube stats videos to kind of learn how other channels operate, how the metrics look like, if we're above or below. And they're awesome. They're actually hard to find, and nobody's like willing to disclose their YouTube information. Understandable. If that's their core business, you don't want your competitors, I suppose, to know. But in our case, like I said, YouTube is like a secondary business for us. Definitely a very important marketing channel. But again, hopefully that's useful if you're a YouTuber. We are like accidental YouTubers is what we've been calling ourselves. But anyway, so this is a Q&A. I'm gonna hang out for like 20 minutes or so answering any questions that you have, so drop them in the chat. My team's gonna summarize those questions for me, and I'm gonna get started now. So starting with Mohammed, how to deal with angry clients? That's a good question. I always try to over-deliver and try to calm customers as much as possible to solve the problem for them. By the time they've emailed me, they're already, for the most part, pretty upset. Some of them find my email online and email me for just the most random, silly questions that should be handled by support. But for real escalations, I try as much as I can to help them out, but with a limit to, I like to think that, limiting the fact that I'm willing to help with reasonable requests. Sometimes requests aren't reasonable. And in those cases, I'd rather stand behind my team and tell them like, hey, I think our team was right to deny you that refund, for example, because I don't want people to just get accustomed to just getting what they want because they emailed me. It's just a matter of principle too. And I get to make that call, I suppose. Next question. So how do you get your users for a marketplace, buyers or sellers first? That's a great question. I've never started a marketplace business, but that is tough because that's what we call in the industry a chicken egg issue. Like which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? For the most part, I think it's a matter of being really good at keeping both of those engaged until the other one comes over. You can also fake one of the others. Like for example, I was talking to a company the other day who were doing like a live chat sort of thing, like a chat roulette or one of these things. And what I told them was like, well, if you're getting people online, you have to have somebody to chat with, right? As customers come in. So I don't know, get your friends, hire your friends to be there on the platform a few hours and just make it seem like it's active. Like I think that you have to come up with some of those hacky sort of things at the very beginning. There's a funny story with Airbnb, because when they launched, they didn't have a lot of listings. So what they did is they actually replicated Craigslist listings. And they also managed to republish Airbnb listings into Craigslist so that people who were listing their homes had a better chance of actually having that booking happen. So they sort of hacked Craigslist to cross-post automatically. Well, that's a way to kind of leverage another existing marketplace to get yours to grow. Cool. So where's the best place to find angel investors? The answer to that would have to be the Slidebean Investor Finder, this new tool that we launched. You can sign up. It's the base plan is free. You'll get investor matches in your email. I think that's an easy first start. Ideally, you should start with people that you know. You should sort of deplete your network, your LinkedIn network, and find any angel investor that you are a second level connection and try to get interest to them. But if you've already done that, if you've depleted that, then I guess the next step is, I don't want to say cold emailing, but probably cold tweeting or reaching over LinkedIn. I think Twitter is ideal, second LinkedIn, and then the last resort is just a cold email. I think investors sort of hate those and very rarely answer them. But again, it is last resort. Our investor finder will get you matches, and we'll give you their Twitter information, their AngelList information, their LinkedIn information, so you can reach out to them. Next question. So what if the financial models that you haven't said could be for a good freemium game? We just launched the new financial model that has for mobile apps, literally, and that's the one you're looking for. Next up, Kai, I was wondering what your opinion was on when a startup should hire their first salesperson. That's a good question. I would say that you as a CEO should have the capacity. If your startup requires sales, we don't require sales. We're a inbound marketing sort of approach. But if your company requires sales, you, CEO, need to be you need to be capable of doing those sales, or at least somebody in the co-founding team. Why? Because you need to get your first customers through. When you're running out of time to do that, when leads are sort of left behind because you don't have time to go through them, that's probably the right time to hire a salesperson in the early stage. Of course, if you have funding, you can kind of skip that. Okay, cool. Super cool video, man. Thanks. Thank you. Have you seen a correlation between your increase in business for Slidebean's core business and your YouTube channel? In terms of core business, has it been worth it? Yes, it's been definitely worth it. And that's why we keep doing it, quote unquote, at a loss. YouTube costs us more than it generates from ads. But we know for a fact that a lot of our customers are coming from YouTube. We've experienced, some of the metrics that we've seen affected by our YouTube have been, the number of leads that we generate, how easier it's become to convert them, even for high tier products. They're much more willing to buy because they know the brand beforehand. So we've seen that increase, and it's I guess the most measurable thing we can do. And non-measurable, we talk to many of these customers, and they mentioned it. Like, they mentioned that they discovered us through our YouTube channel. So it's there. Brand awareness, like I said, is hard to track, hard to measure, but the value is definitely being brought in. And we've seen that even in our growth of subscribers over the last few years after YouTube has exploded for us. Next question. Is it okay to release an app for public beta before investing into actually forming an LLC corporation? I would say yes. If you trust your team, if you trust your team not running away and kind of claiming that the code is theirs and disputing, establishing an LLC or corporation is an expensive thing. There are maintenance costs associated, accounting, tax filing, and you want to avoid that as much as possible. So yes, I think yes, you should launch before an LLC or corp. Next question. So how do you employ someone in a core position of your business? I believe that's what the next step we need to take to distribute the workloads, but I can't seem to trust new people enough. That's a good dilemma. You have to learn to trust people. You have to learn to delegate. That is probably one of the first things I learned as a CEO, but one of the hardest, if you will, to kind of accept that I needed to delegate, because otherwise I was becoming, like, your job as a CEO is to enable people to move faster, to enable people to do their jobs, to enable people to grow the company, because you're not doing that single-handedly. And when you're micromanaging, or you're not wanting to delegate attitude, becomes a roadblock for people, and you're sort of a bottleneck for the company, that's, you can see that you're doing something wrong. And I've found myself in that position, and whenever I see it, I try and delegate and find new people that have the authority to make those calls and not have to go through me. Next up, Caya, what is your role in Slidebean? Are you hacker, hipster, or hustler? That's a good question. I'm a graphic designer by trade, but I don't do a lot of graphic design. So that, originally I would have fallen into the hipster category, but eventually I sort of had to become a hustler. I had to, in the sense that I had to learn to do marketing. I'm not a marketer, not by profession. So I had to learn that the hard way, and sort of became that marketing leader person. I still like to think that I operate as an active CMO, because we don't have a CMO in the company. So most of my time goes to marketing. I've disconnected myself from the product. So my other two co-founders are definitely the hacker and the hipster type. Next question. So what do you think about solo tech founders? I think I could talk a lot about solo founders. I think that the problem you're going to come across is, like take me, for example. I can code a little bit. I can code a basic e-commerce site. I've been doing that for the Slidebean marketing site for a while. And I know marketing, and I can raise money. Could I start a business on my own next time? I want to believe I could, but I don't want to. Why? Because the value of having co-founders is immense. They're not only psychological support for you, but they also prove that you're not alone in this thing, that somebody else believes in this idea, and somebody else is willing to quit their job and work for that. And that's something that people often ignore when they're recruiting co-founders, or people who want to do a solo founder. A lot of times because they haven't found somebody that believes in their idea enough to join them. But that is a reality check on the idea. Maybe it's not that good of an idea. Also, the fact that you just can't do everything yourself, right? You just can't code and raise money and market your app at the same time in the early stage. You just can't. So it's going to be slow. And in the end, slow means somebody could jump on this market opportunity before you. So I don't see why you would start a company on your own. I don't see that unless you have a lot of money in the bank and you can hire an awesome team early on. And again, you're paying out of your pocket. You're risking your own cash for this. But I would rather risk stock of a company early stage than just doing it with cash, even if I had the cash. Next up, Eduardo. I used the Slidebean presentations app for a long time. Great software. Thank you. Next up, what was there an epiphany moment when you guys pivoted Slidebean? Oh yes, we've had some epiphanies. Some of them we found out at the moment. Some of them we didn't. Probably the funniest story is when we started Slidebean, we were in 500 startups, and we were struggling with getting people to onboard through the app. Right at that time, we didn't have templates. So you would come into Slidebean, you could start a presentation, and it was really easy to use and really simple. You could wrap up a deck really fast, but there were no templates. So at some point we figured, we were in 500 startups, so Dave McClure was around. And at one point I asked him, he had come up with this startup Viagra template that he promoted for a while. That did not age well, but I asked him, like, Dave, do you mind if we put that template on Slidebean so people can start a presentation from that? Obviously beautified because the original slides are pretty ugly. And he said, yeah, fine, do it. And that we didn't realize how powerful that single silly feature was, because it solved our onboarding, because people now came into something that they could see how it looked. But it also allowed us to promote Slidebean. It also was like the first step of us bringing templates from other pitch decks and using that as a starting point for people. It's insane how much of an epiphany, if you will, or lucky strike that was. We probably wouldn't be here if we hadn't done that. Can someone who has just completed his bachelor's degree in engineering start a tech startup fresh out of college? A lot of people tell me you need to have an industry experience to have a master's degree. I don't think a master's degree is necessary. I do think that industry experience is important. If ideally you want to start a company on something that you're an expert on. If you're a CEO, you're inevitably going to have to manage people. So, for example, a lot of the management skills or tactics or policies that we define in Slidebean come from my own experience being an employee and learning what works and what doesn't. And that's sort of I think that experience is important. If you've never worked in a company, you have to sort of learn the hard way, and that could cost the company a lot of time and money. So I say yes, some experience is ideal. And yes, definitely the company that you start needs to be about something that you are an expert on, that you have a unique skill that other people don't have. That's the advantage that the founding team has in a business. In our case, 3 co-founders, we all came from a design background, and that's why our initial product release, which was Slidebean Presentations, was a design product, and there was some credibility that we could make it better, the presentation process. Next question. So hi, Caya. So I've been working for a startup for 2 years now, and I'm burned out. I'm also planning on launching my own startup. Should I leave because I'm no longer passionate? I mean, that's a double-edged sword question. Like, you shouldn't leave a job unless you have another job ready waiting for you. That's what I think, especially in this economy. But if you want to start a company, yes, you eventually have to quit. My advice is don't quit your day job until you know that this new company makes sense. There's a lot that you can do without quitting your day job. You can just, you're going to have to work 16-hour shifts when you start the company anyway. So work 8 hours of your business and then work 8 hours at another company, I guess. So do you think monopolies like Facebook will be broken up? That's a good question. We made a video about that. I don't know if I don't know enough of the law, like the antitrust legislation, to know if Facebook's going to be broken up. I have to say I don't know. I don't want to speculate. Caya, so we have a pitch deck ready to my LinkedIn VC contacts. How should I send the first message regarding the startup? Best practice would be appreciated. So this is a common question I get. My suggestion is don't cold email investors. Don't cold pitch them. But never, ever just send your deck just like that. Try to establish a relationship with them. First, again, try an intro. If that doesn't work, try Twitter. Try establishing a relationship with them with Twitter. Retweet some of their stuff. Try to do some interactions. Stalk them for a month or so and you interact with them. Try to get yourself visible to them, to the VCs that you're going to target. And then after you have maybe a start of a relationship, then maybe a direct message and tell them, hey, can I send you my pitch deck? Always ask for permission to send a deck before sending it. That's I don't want to say the rule, but that's the formal, politically correct, socially accepted way to do it. Hey, Caya, so what do you think of non-coded prototype for getting initial attractions? I don't know what you mean by that. I want to say, if you have a prototype that you don't have, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's coded or not coded. It's what matters is get this prototype in front of people as soon as possible. If you're doing like a UX mockup, like a UX thing where you don't have to code, then well, that's good. You can kind of onboard people, see if it makes sense for them, and you should do that as part of your tests anyway. We lost video, right? We did.